isn't coming, so why don't we get started here? I understand we're celebrating a birthday today, so we'll let Ryan.
Oh, this is fun.
Well,
You know how that is. Housekeeping items, exits, for anybody who's not familiar, I know you've all been here before, but exits, restrooms, underneath that exit sign over here toward the front of the building. Do we have anybody virtually?
Stephens Eiderler, I'm sure I pronounced his name wrong.
Sure.
It's me, Buffy.
Oh, it's Steve.
Hey.
Oh, well, hi there.
Sorry, last minute family thing popped up. I'm not able to be there in person.
Okay, are you able to stay through the Zoom or do you need to go?
No, I'm good to go. I just wouldn't be able to make it there on time. That's all.
Okay, all right. Well, next time we'll have 2 sets of handouts for you.
Thank you.
Okay, if you have any questions at any time, if I forget to ask, just speak up so we know you have something, Steve.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, we have 2 sets of minutes tonight, September 14th. Are there any corrections, additions? I know they were a little bit later in coming to you via email, but hopefully you've had a chance to check. Anybody, anything on the 14th? All right, the September 14th minutes then will be approved as submitted. And then September 28th meeting. Any corrections, additions, alterations to that set? No? Okay, all right, so minutes of September 14th and minutes of September 28th will be accepted as presented. Thank you, Bonnie. Okay, the usual in committee organization, with Monday being a holiday, the posting on the website did not happen until Tuesday. So if any of you were concerned about that, that's what happened there, but everything should have been up there 24 hours, which is the protocol for the open meetings law. And the posting for what we're looking at tonight, what Danny will have on the screen, was also there. Notebooks, again, the 3-hole punch is here tonight. If anybody wants to punch something for the notebook, you're free to do that. I did punch a few things that I thought were pretty much in final format for you if you wanted to integrate those in the notebook. In terms of communication, the only thing that came in to Denise for distribution is a handout that's coming up from the Mendon Fire Department about their equipment roster. Does anyone have any communications? Okay. Any questions to this point? All right, moving on then. Item number 7 is the committee charge. We're still working in that area under governance and jurisdiction. One of the assignments that's continuing unless Ryan can fulfill it, telling me you found the subscriber agreement.
I was told that it's being found, but it's not been found. It's being worked on. When I talked to Dell, he said he talked to you as well.
Yes.
That you guys had some sort of plan maybe, or
Well, he said if he did not find it, he would ask me to call the 911 center and get a copy of it for you.
did he communicate that yet or no? That he's not done it?
It's been a week, so I haven't heard anything. That's why I thought maybe you had it tonight.
I will reach out to him tomorrow to
Yeah, no issues, but we're, that's a document that we
Yep.
will need, so I don't want to lose track of it. Under the current capacities, Honey Falls and Mendon Fire Departments, they were working on a couple of assignments. One of which is the tanker task force that we want to add to the mutual assistance table. Is there a report on that from Honey Falls? From a couple of meetings ago,
Okay.
we talked about that, and I
I'll
think
get that.
Anthony he's aware of it.
Okay, I'll
Let me
make sure to
leave it at that. What about Mendon? That was with Chief Hester.
DDT might know more.
Steve Chitterer, do you have any update on that for us?
So Anthony, myself, and both chiefs have been working on the raw data computations, and as luck with have it, we've been opening Pandora's box and finding a little bit more errors that we had already missed in previous ones. So it's still being rectified. We have a very good, probably 80% working solution, but it's not ready for public consumption yet. Sorry.
So Tanker Task Force is still on the list, though, to be completed.
That is Chief Kester unto himself, Muffy. I don't have anything with that one.
Okay, so what you were referring to might be the summaries of all of the data with the boxes on it, that piece?
Yeah, that mutual aid piece. I'm sorry. The mic kind of cut out in the middle. I thought that's what you were talking about.
No, but I know last time was reported that you were still trying to summarize all of this plethora of data we have with the response for the mutual aid and the call types in the box system.
Yes, that piece I've gotten up to date up to the last probably 36 months is accurate. The Tanker Task Force piece, I'm sorry, I thought you were referencing, I didn't think you were referencing that. Chief Kester was doing the research into that one. I don't have anything on that one, nothing.
Okay, all right. Also, Mendon and Honey Eye Falls, we're going to do some research and decide which fuel tank capacities you wanted to note for DEC regulations and what we have inside the town of Mendon. Does anybody have an update yet on the size of the fuel tanks you want to track? Petroleum tanks?
Not that I'm aware of. I know that Anthony and Chief Kester, I thought Chief Truer were involved in the conversation. I was not a part of.
I think we're still deciding on the amount, but there was communication about that.
Okay, so there's, if you didn't hear Corey, he said that they're still looking at trying to determine the storage amount and the capacity that will be of interest to them. So we'll just, continue to hold these. Okay, let's see. On the mutual assistance chart, I made some corrections based on our last meeting. Chief Kester asked me to remove Mumford from that mutual assistance agreement with Mendon. So I took that off. That's all I did. So I wanted to print you out another one. So until we get the Tanker Task Force information, this mutual assistant agreement chart is a correct version of standard mutual assistance. So if anybody has corrections to that going forward, please get them to me and I'll make them. When we get the Tanker Task Force, we'll add that as another entity on this chart. Okay. All right, is there anything else under governance, jurisdictions, or current capabilities with the fire departments? All right, then we're gonna go and take a look at what Chief Kester had prepared for us tonight, and that is 3-hole punched. It's also stapled, and it's called Mendon Fire Department Fleet. It's in a spreadsheet, so it goes across 2 pages.
I do have one correction for this. The expected life for trucks, so like 3C16, 367, and 3C26 should be 5 years, not 12.
All right, give me those again.
I was looking at that and I'm going,
No way.
No
And the only
way.
reason the white one's still around is because we're testing it as a command vehicle.
Yeah, that's-
So 3C26 is what?
So 3C26 should be 5 years, so that's over right now. And then 367 and 3C16 should also be 5 years. And it'll probably be more like 3, but 5 is probably the right number to put.
Okay. Is there anything else that you noticed on this?
Not that jumped out at me.
Okay, so down the first column, there's retired. So are these trucks no longer in service?
Correct.
So if I take those off, is that all right? I don't want to mislead anybody by what you have in-house.
That would be perfectly fine to take those off.
Steve Chitter, do you have an objection to that, or do you know why these were put on here?
They were put on there just to illustrate the planning and the cycle of some of the vehicles. It was just more of informational piece. I as an individual don't see any issue with taking the retired piece off. If you're just talking about the live fleet, that's what's on the floor is that top section, so.
Okay. Do you feel there is a value in knowing this information someplace?
I think for the taxpayers, it's just kind of showing that there has been a replacement plan in place for the Mendon Fire District. I believe that was Chief Kester's intention of displaying that information. Just saying that it's not a one and done willy-nilly type of plan. There's actually been some forecasting and forward thought in the apparatus replacement.
Okay, so on the top piece of that chart, he has noticed the year that it was purchased and then the expected replacement year. And if that has a pattern to it, we might be better putting that pattern into a narrative that you summarize across a couple paragraphs so that we know, for example, the pieces that Ryan talked about are on a 5-year plan, and that has been the practice across, a couple decades or whatever it is. That would speak more to simplify things rather than having people look back and forth on a chart to try to figure that out.
Understand that. I will pass that along, Murphy.
Okay, hopefully that would be helpful to everybody, because if you do have a plan in place like that, we need to convey that. Thank you, Steve.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
In the interest of full disclosure, do you think there's a benefit in knowing how much the retired apparatus was sold for, how much of that cost is recouped, and the benefit of a replacement schedule, and why hanging on to apparatus is not good?
If the fire departments believe that that's a valid point to make for this report, then that is important.
That
Yes.
probably is, because that's a great example of why we wouldn't, another reason we wouldn't keep a pickup truck for like 12 years if you can
Right,
help it.
exactly.
Because when you get them at the state bid, you go to resell them 3 years later, there's still quite a bit of value left in them.
Yes,
So is that something that you can provide?
yes, we can, yeah.
All right, now, how far back do you think we ought to go with that? Do you want to look at the last time you replaced a specific vehicle that's in service?
That's what I would do, is what's replaced what's currently on the floor, or currently on the floor, what's replaced with what's currently there.
That can be done.
Okay, so if you added another column to what's on the floor, last time this piece of equipment was purchased, the previous piece sold for X amount of dollars. Somewhere near what the purchase cost is, so that we can see that there's a value there.
Good.
So,
Just in case, I mean, not to interrupt, just in case anybody were to ask, why do you sell a pickup truck after 3 years or 5 years, instead of keeping it for 10? This is why, because we get 2/3 of that cost back. That's what we try to do with the Chiefs Tahoe, is get rid of it for 3 years, almost make our money back and go right back into another one.
so maybe someplace near the purchase cost, you would show the revenue from replacement.
I mean, that makes sense from, regular vehicles. Fire trucks, what do you get? Maybe 10%
Maybe,
if you're lucky.
maybe, you know that, I mean, yeah,
If you can sell them.
if you can sell it,
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
so that's amazing. How they lose their value.
So, just if I could ask a question here. So I take it that if the same number is retained from the upper portion to the lower portion, that's, you're replacing basically vehicle for vehicle, so to speak. I mean, sometimes they're not the same.
I was gonna
make
say not
and model,
necessarily.
But do they do the same thing?
In most cases, yes, like we have an engine setup, we'll get two engines, but one set up as an engine and one set up as a rescue, right?
Gotcha.
And so yes, when we got rid of the old one, we replaced it with something similar, but the numbers
So the-
do change from time to time.
So the one that says 3C26, that says it was purchased in 15, expected life is 5, if I get
Yeah.
that right. So does that mean it should have been replaced in 2020?
So the thing with that is we kept the old 3C16 vehicle, turned it into 26 to test out having a second Chiefs car versus having just one. So we recycled it, kind of started a new cycle by putting that in there. That's why that's over the amount of time. Like Corey was saying, we say 5, but it's really 3 if you can get them in time. I know that like we're looking at already replacing the two F-150s, but it might be 2 years out before they show up.
Sure. Yeah, that's what I was wondering if it was something you were waiting on because of the availability.
The number also, you can tell what it is.
I'm gonna
No.
put that. I'll print that out next time and bring you the numbering scheme for the
Yeah,
equipment,
it's
so you
numbering
know
scheme,
that the
so you
end
know
number is.
Engine
how it
or
works.
ladder truck,
I see.
or, and the 3 is Italian. So like Rush and Henrietta are 5. Right, I mean, these are beans, it's just not random numbers.
Right, no,
There's
they have a
scheme.
rhyme and reason.
So that, so if you're in a fire scene and see that or hear it, you know what's coming.
If you will,
So
print it out
if
for
one of
the-
them,
Yeah, I'm sorry,
and
I'm jumping.
No, it's
I
fine.
apologize for my naiveness of this, but if you know something that ends in a 6.5 is an engine, somebody says, no matter what the first number is, you know that there's an engine coming.
Yeah, or like a 3, oh, 1 is what, a ladder?
Yeah.
Or, you know, whatever. I don't know, but if somebody says 301 is coming in from the south or something, you know, that's the ladder, and you could say, please pull in the second drive, you know, that there's a little rhyme, supposedly. Can I ask it, I'm a little also naive, tender compared to an engine, how does it become a tender?
So it's a tanker, so it's set up just to carry water and shuttle water.
Oh, there's no pump.
There is a pump on it, it's smaller than the engines, but the tank is bigger. So that's for the non-hydrogen areas in our
Right.
district, and it also carries 2 portable ponds.
So they're calling it, it's still 1,000 gallon capacity.
Two.
Pump.
2,200.
Oh, pump capacity, yeah.
Oh,
Pump
yes,
capacity.
yep.
So just because it's got a bigger tank is why it's called a tender instead of a tanker? I guess I'm.
So when you get, if I may, when you get into the FEMA typing, a tanker has wings and flies, a tender drives over the road.
Oh, thank you. There you go.
Yep.
There you go.
Says the helicopter pilot. Thank you, Steve.
No problem. I'm not a pilot. I sit in the back.
So when we talk tanker task force, we should be saying tender task. force.
Yeah,
that's
correct. That would be a correct statement, Kevin Smith.
Thank you.
Get bonus points for that.
There you go.
And one more, what is an auto pulse?
I mean, Steve probably explained it better, but it is basically,
CPR.
the automatic
Automated
CPR
CPR.
You know,
device.
the compression?
Yep.
You might know it as a Lucas.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
the stars of the goal.
Okay. It's on 367, so.
It's the
what is that,
rescue.
Like a,
So that is the, the squad utility vehicle, that's what pulls the ATV. And that's the first out for our EMS runs. So that's just a pickup truck.
but that stays at the firehouse, and somebody doesn't have that with them.
Correct. That is always at the firehouse.
Is it also like a grass fire truck too?
Yes and
Yeah,
no, but yes, because it's pulling the ATV.
Oh, the
So they- yeah,
ATVs,
so that
grass
pulls the trailer for
fire.
the ATV.
So one of the things that this piece of information is going to do follows on to the next task 2 here. where you see in red features tables. Last time we talked about target features as more or less built landscape presence versus natural features, weather, flooding, earthquakes, presence of water. And then each target feature and natural features had tables that went with them. And we talked last time about building out these tables in a way that makes a little bit more sense when we fold in the equipment in the response. So Danny, can you put up the natural features table? So as we went through this the last time, down the column called exposure, we had life safety, property damage, and environmental concerns as the priorities for any call, which they are. So I took those out and up by exposure. I had added, David had recommended that we look at exposures as the risks. So we would talk about what essentially is the call for those. So for streams and tributaries, exposure or risks are flooding, life safety. We've had drownings, we've had rescues, those kinds of things. So the exposures and the risks, if we could drill down with the fire departments to the types of calls, the types of exposures, the types of risks to the community. When we get to emergency response, we're going to show locally would be the fire departments. You might need an ambulance where you would put EMS there in addition to the fire department EMS specialties. You might need a special operations team. So whatever the emergency response would be expected, would go there. And then extending out another column, whatever equipment and staffing you would require to answer that call and perform that response would go out again. So this chart is a working process for both natural features and target features. And we're going to start working on that in earnest with the fire department. So I may ask to meet with you offline to look at this. So where Mendon might send their rescue, Pontiac Falls may also send the rescue. We'll put those equipment numbers on there. And then whatever your staffing requirement would be for that call, we would need to know how many people you want to send. So then as we go down and look at your list of staffing in the two departments, where are you calling mutual assistance and who are you calling? So this is how we're going to build all that out to come to the determination of what are the risks and the needs and the exposures in the community? What do we have to go and who do we have to go? Now we can start in the next section of the report. Where are we aligning that with what you think we need that we may not have? So do we need more mutual assistance? Do we need more people? Do we need different kind of equipment? Do we need to be replacing equipment? And when we do that, look at additional features on the equipment or ancillary equipment on that vehicle. So now in that section of the report, we can look at, all right, if we do this, are we better at the rescue? Are we better at suppression of fire right away? Are we better because we don't have to wait so long for mutual assistance because we've done something else? But then we have to model this. What does all of this mean? And do we need to make a change or recommend, not we, do we need to recommend a change to the town board in the structure of the fire protection services that we have? So we're moving forward as we go along. We just are not always able to show it right away because sometimes we don't have the pieces of information. So if it's okay with Chief Truer and Mike, Steve Chitterer, I'm gonna try and meet with you offline to take a look at building it out in this respect. Keeping a simple process or simple language here. Exposures are call types. Emergency responses, who's going? And then based on who's going, what are they bringing with equipment? What are you bringing in terms of personnel? And what more do we need if we don't have enough? So your fleet roster, your inventory of interior, exterior, fire police, all of that is important to keep us moving forward to get where we want to go to make a recommendation. So again, I impress on you the need for this information. And I'm certainly willing to work with you offline because today is our 7th meeting. We have 7 more to go. And the 7th, at the end of that next section is, oh, here's the report. It's in final form. Submit it now at the end of January to meet the February 1st deadline. So we can't procrastinate. We can only do as fast as we can go, but that means we want to be accurate, but we don't have to get down in the weeds for a lot of detail unless you think there's a point you want to make that needs that extra detail. Is that a reasonable approach, you think? Does that sound like it's something that the district and the village and the town can work with? Okay, so I really want to start giving you pieces of the report. So I'm going to try very hard next time to make sure that I can put some of this narrative in a format to integrate this chart data that we've worked with all along. All right. One of the things that I did, and what you have in your packet, the target feature chart. And I'm going to ask you to go to the 2nd page. Down under business and manufacturing, you see I added 2 more. I added solar farms because that was one of the features that we had added to that risk list that we put together. And then I also added agriculture because certainly both departments have worked on agriculture accidents with equipment, machinery. We're concerned about fuel and maybe hazardous materials that are used for agricultural purposes. So I thought that that would be an important add-on that I'm sorry I had overlooked, but I think we're going to find that there's a usefulness for that. And then if you go to the next page, which unfortunately still says page 2, technology is great when you can make it work. The bullet there that says potable supply last time said potable water, and I just thought it was better to put potable supply because potable means drinking water. So, all right. If we go back to the first page at the top, the column heading stand. So the call types are like the risks and exposures, the emergency response is the agencies, and then again, building out to the other columns of response, equipment, staffing. All right, if this looks doable, we'll continue on in that vein. So next time you'll have significant updates to these 2 charts. It should have some narratives and maps and different things to include in each of these areas so that for the town board, the village board, the district, there's a definition of what we're looking at when we talk about pipelines, when we talk about streams and tributaries. This would be in addition to that information in these tables. Any questions on the features?
Where, for number 3, flight pathways,
Yeah,
where would you find that information? Where do you?
from FAA.
Right, okay.
So my house,
Yeah, we're in,
it is.
our area here is a flight path.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay. I was curious.
Plus, you know, going east and west or up in the, you know,
Way up.
higher elevations from like New York and Boston to Chicago and parts west.
So are you looking for where the pathways go over or how much air traffic there is?
Just to confirm that we are in a designated pathway and to get an idea of the number of flights that are going over us.
Okay.
For in and out of Rochester plus high elevation transport. And I don't know that we'll put anything in there, but also with the presence of the National Guard and the flight facility for military purposes at the airport, that is in the mix. I don't know that we want to spell that out separately. But Steve, I'll talk with you about that.
Okay,
Depending on what I get from FAA, it might be included in there, or they might tell me to do that separately. I want to see what their take is on it. Okay, anything else on the features? Okay, let's see. All right, if you look ahead on that forecast of the agendas, we're a little bit behind where I had hoped to be, but again, it's all about accuracy and correctness. So I don't want something that's not going to be able to be verified or is going to be a problem for town board reading, village reading, district reading when we get to that point. So if you look at today, for example, it says to present initial financial data. I've been working on various aspects of financing for fire protection as we've been moving forward, and since we started, even before we had our first meeting, trying to get some things together for you. I'm going to try and have more of that in a way that will make sense for what we're looking at, and with pieces that will be important to you that you've already indicated to me that you want to know about. And hopefully then from there, we can talk about what more do you need to know? What more do you want to know? So for example, there will be information there about fire contracts from the village to the town in a historical perspective, and also how we are arriving at the contract. What's the procedure to calculate the contract? What goes on with that? We'll talk about assessed value for the town, the village, the fire district. We'll talk about the budgets for the town, the village, the fire district. We'll talk about the money that's allocated by the town and the village in their current budget for those employees that you saw on a previous chart, that their role pertains to fire protection and public safety. The building inspector, the fire marshal, the code enforcement officer. We'll try to tie in a little bit of the highway department and the overlap for what you use highway departments for in some of your calls. So this is all integrated financially someplace, depending on the governance of the fire department and the governance of the people in the general category of government service who work for fire protection and public safety. So there are a lot of pieces to financial aspects of fire protection and public safety. Another one is debt. You've heard the fire district talk that they're debt free. They don't have debt. The village has debt. The town has debt. How does that relate to their borrowing capacity? And how do we calculate that? And why is it important? What are the reserve funds? What are they for? How is that important? So there's a big picture here with finance. I want to make sure that you get what you want. It's in a way that's understandable and it's in a way that's useful for you when we get to the modeling and recommendation. So we'll start to take a look at that next time. And from there, it's going to be pretty much filling out this information from the fire departments, looking at the finances, looking back at the structures that are available for fire protection in New York State, and saying if you want to make a recommendation, what is that recommendation going to be? Is it going to affect the structure of the fire service here? Is it going to affect the finances? What is it going to affect how you do business functionally on the ground? So it's all going to come together for you. I want to make sure it does that in a rational, reasonable way for you functionally as fire departments and for your government service, town, village, and district. Does that make sense to you? Okay, so we're looking at pieces of information. Those pieces will come together in a whole based on what you want, where you want to go with it. So we're going to need some time for that piece. So basically the month of at least the second meeting in December and across the holiday into the first meeting in January, you know, we're really going to be looking at some significant piece of modeling. If you want to make a recommendation, that's where it needs to happen, because the last meeting in January, we need to come to consensus on this final report. I mean, if there's some typos and things that need to be addressed, that's one thing. If there's some significant discussion that needs to take place, we'll have to get another meeting in the mix. And we'll need to know that early in January to get it published and all of that. Or if you think you need more time, then we'll have to go back to the town board and get their okay, push this out a little farther. But I hope that's not going to be necessary. I hope our hurdle right now is the information getting into a usable format. All right. Do any of you have any questions?
Can I ask? So what do you see, Muffin, the recommendation from this committee? I mean, the data is fine. We got our numbers, calls, money, all this information. So you see this committee going to the town and saying, okay, here's the information. And basically, it's to back up what recommendations, right? All this is
Yeah.
just here's
Yeah,
why we think.
you need to substantiate.
So
what
then,
you're-
so what are we hitting on? Are we hitting on, I'm asking, everything or a little bit? My point being is, are we recommending, firehouses, fire equipment in general, not apparatus, but equipment, personnel, compensation? I'm asking is so how do we come up with a recommendation? If it's so very broad, is what I'm asking. It seems like it's either, it's so broad, it's gonna be hard to bring that to a conclusion, right?
Well, I can understand the question. Can you put up the chart, the natural features chart? Okay. You know that we're going to add some columns here to include equipment and personnel beyond going out to the road. So when we get this built out for the target features and the natural features, my guess is that there's going to be some discussion from the fire service that says, we need more people. Because that's already that's the reason we're here, because Mendon Fire and Honey Falls Fire, we supervised and said, we need more people. So if more people means we do more mutual assistance, I don't know if you can do any more than you're doing now. I think functionally, you're probably reaching the limit for that because of the engaged surrounding departments that you already have. I mean, there's a limit to how many people are around to call in mutual aid or mutual assistance. So if we find out that our real big problem is we don't have enough people, then how are we going to get them? And
I guess the people I understand, I mean, we really could boil it down to, we need personnel, period. I
okay,
mean, we really,
We
I
know
think we
that
probably
now.
could. Right?
we know it.
But from, let's go with just something like apparatus. And don't take this wrong, I'm taking the word as a committee member from the fire department that piece of apparatus they have is adequate, serviceable, and the piece that they need. I don't know that, I'm just, I don't see the truck. They tell me it's in good shape, I don't know. And maybe even from the firehouse. I haven't been in Honey Falls Firehouse. I don't know if it's falling down or if it's Taj Mahal. So what I'm saying is, as a committee member, how am I gonna recommend these things other than, what the call types and the amount of equipment and manpower? If we're gonna go past that or all of it, we need to almost see it and be aware of it, is what I'm saying.
So
Right.
when we get out here,
Uh-huh.
one of the things we know, we need more people.
Right.
Right, so if we're maxed out with mutual assistance,
Right.
how are we gonna get more people?
Well,
And you know, because you were a career
right, I
firefighter,
mean, that
that's
could,
a path to go.
but that path then, as soon as you recommend that, let's hypothetically, you recommend, we need career people, let's say that's a recommendation. But the career people might bring with it, well, wait a minute, the building that they would live in or occupy is not adequate for living quarters,
So in
et
the
cetera.
recommendation, then you talk about what that need is.
Right, that we might need it, but I guess my point is, how do I know what the firehouse is what I'm saying? Is that if it's adequate for people or not.
For it is.
So you want to do a field trip?
Well, I actually am saying, it's one thing to be in here, but if we were standing in the fire as a committee in the truck bay at Mendon, I'll pick on Mendon, and we might go, this is fine, it's adequate, it's built well, or what have you, and maybe the folks from Mendon, the district could say, but here's the problem is we're not ADA compliant, I'm just trying to come up with reasons, not reasons, but questions. So that then at the committee, we could say, you know what? Looks like our apparatus is good, but we have a firehouse that definitely needs replacement. Well, we need another firehouse. I was just in West Webster today. I passed down how many firehouses? They're on every corner. So I'm just saying, I'm trying to, I'm kind of asking, I'm asking your opinion is what I'm asking is, what do you think that looks like? How do we get to that conclusion? I think we can already see as we're building out, we're almost saying, here's our evidence for this, but as the people that need to recommend, how do we know that evidence other than just our flow chart is correct?
So the recommendation is the form of, is there a structural change in the fire service now? For
Uh-huh.
example, we have a district, we have a village fire department. Do we recommend that, for example, a joint fire district? Do we recommend a town-wide fire district? That gets the people that you have at Hundred Falls and Mendon together as a single, two companies, as a single department
Right.
somehow. I mean, maybe that's the recommendation.
So if we do,
Because you do that,
Yeah.
now you open up the assessed value to the whole town, which gives you a bigger dollar pool for compensation, for equipment, for a new firehouse in a more central area. I don't know, for emergency services.
If we
zones.
recommend any given thing, do we then recommend fixes to that. In other words, if we said, if the committee here said we just need to make one giant firehouse in the middle of the field over at Charlie Hastings' house or something, that's what we need to do. Do we then as a committee say, this is not only what we need, but here's how we could accomplish that?
I think some of the recommendation depends on how much detail you want. Town asked us to do 3 things and come back with the report. So I'm gonna go back to the memorial, the military memorial committee, for example. We had a charge. We had to recommend a site. And then the town took it from there and hired people to tell, you know, what we want it to look like. Here's the recommendation from the committee. So if this committee makes a recommendation, then it's up to the town to decide, okay, is it viable, is it reasonable, and how do we do it if we're going to do it? It's up to them.
That is up to them, but I guess my point is, if we come up with a recommendation and we have the evidence or information to back up our reasoning, to make it even a stronger recommendation would be, and here's how, here's some remedies to get us to the right spot.
So here's our recommendation, and if you adopt it, if you think that this is the right thing to do, then you're going to need to look at firehouse.
I'm just saying, I think if you help them, you can give this to the town board, and some people are gonna, could be,
You're in the Netherlands.
what's a fire truck? I don't, you know what I mean? So you almost need to say, here's what we have, here's why we came up with it, here are some remedies to help get you to that. Some of them might not taste very good. You know what I mean? They're gonna, and others might be very simple things, but if you can help them in that direction. I'm just trying to, in my head, where are we trying to tell, you know, what are we looking at doing here? I mean, I can take the recommendation. In fact, I'd love to hear the 2 districts. Department of district. Here's exactly what we think we need. And here's why. And let's see if we can help plug it in.
Well, please be a little bit cautious there, okay? Because it's the whole committee that's going to make the recommendation. Everybody needs to give the input, but for a fire department to say, here's what we want, here's what we need, that's a little bit pointed at this point, because
Not what we want as much as here's what we observe,
that's,
right?
and yes.
Here's, I don't observe a manpower shortage at my house from the fire department. I don't see it, but they see it at the next call, and they can say, geez, I couldn't get this engine on the road because I couldn't get a qualified driver. So they see that, and if they can verbalize that, this is where we are.
Well, you're
Yes.
gonna see that even more on, what Chief Kester did here. I think he's got a staffing column here. Number of people. Seating capacities, okay? All right, so the seating capacity, you know, is that what you are expecting as the fire department? You want the seats filled? All right, so when we look at personnel, there's a seating capacity. How many are you typically putting in that vehicle? So when you give us your active roster and you tell us I have how many interior firefighters, how many exterior firefighters, how many fire police? Okay, that's gonna come through as now I've got a seating capacity for 5, but I only get 2. Do you need more than that on the field at the scene? Yes. How many more do you need? We've got to get that complement. That's why we're going mutual assistance. We're calling for mutual aid. So we're going to see the shortfall there, just like we're going to see the shortfall in dollars, just like we're going to see if there's a need for turning a piece of equipment over because it's reached its useful life expectancy, or we're having real maintenance problems with it. These are the things that need to come out to be able to get to the point to say, here's what we're lacking on fireground. Here's what we're lacking on these calls. What is the fix? Is the fix dollars for some reason? If it is, where do the dollars need to be spent?
And just, if you take a few minutes and go through some of the other reports that have been done in the past, you can see how, like, this is so painful, this process, quite frankly. I mean,
Oh,
it just
yeah.
is. But you can see how the document, then what we're doing now, what they're doing now, is, how it grows, and then how previous committees have then made suggestions. And also, you know, said, this is something, this was a suggestion, but this is why it won't work. So take a couple minutes and look through. It really, it opened my eyes a lot.
There's a fire and EMS study that the town did. There's a firehouse study that the village did. And I mean, I know that report that I wrote in 2016 is very detailed. There's good information in there for some things. The comprehensive plans, that list, the study, comprehensive plans and study, there's a lot of information there. So I'm hopeful that, you know, like in the next couple of months, next couple of meetings, maybe some things will become more evident. It'll clarify some things for you. I don't disagree with you that, you know, it's a big picture right now, and how do we get where we're going? The financial piece is going to be really tough. And I would just say to you, if you're going to recommend a change, we have to make sure that that change can further evolve, because every fire service, unless it's totally clear, and even then because of budget cuts, every EMS agency, every 911 center from here to the Albany area, up and down across the state, everybody's trying for staff. There aren't people to fill the seats and fill the activities that are necessary. So, you know, in the 1980s, I sat on a New York State Legislative Committee about the future of fire protection in New York State. And there are some things now that were forecast that are happening. There's some things that didn't happen. There's been studies by the Fire Advisory Board in this county, other counties. Genesee County just did a study, Ontario County study reports coming out. You're going to see some of these things. We'll talk about them, of how changes are needed and how people think it's best to accomplish those changes to fulfill the fire protection obligation in the EMS service that state health requires, pre-hospital care, the whole thing, and even 911. I mean, I just sat through 2 meetings for emergency management in New York State in August, and it's incredible. The counties that are crying for people. And even state DOT, they don't have enough plow drivers to run their normal cycles of vacations and sickness. I mean, it's not a pretty picture. So a lot of it's going to come down to finances, and what we need to do as a community, have the benefit of the services that we have enjoyed and really need to preserve. So this is not an exercise in futility. This is the real deal, and hopefully help the town of Mendon and the village and the fire district see what potential is still within the community to do, and where we're going to need to maybe shop for more service capacity. And then, you know, what are the major call types? What should our fire department be responding to? And this has nothing to do with the ambulance other than Mendon Fire runs EMS. You run EMS. I mean, if you saw any news tonight, you saw what the Village of Hilton did. You know, they're no longer having paramedics. Ambulance in-house. So the reasoning, at least according to the news, was they're not raising taxes in the Village of Hilton. But there's always more at play. But this is a serious thing, and I know you all take it seriously. So.
Okay. So this kind of goes off what David said. It's a left-handed kind of term, but we know the committee is going to propose a model of what fire protection looks like. For an example, we're going to say a town-wide fire committee is an example. do you believe it's the committee's recommendation or responsibility beyond that recommendation to say, this is what we propose, but the village, we need to build a firehouse in the village, or build a firehouse in the roundabout, or we need another ladder truck or one less engine? Are we gonna go that far in detail? Or is it just that we come and this is what model we recommend, and then it's up to whoever else beyond that, the authority having jurisdiction, which if you consolidate it would be fire district, townwide, and say, we're gonna build a firehouse in the village, or we're not. So how far do you
It's a
want us to go?
recommendation to the board for a model of how the fire service you recommend it be structured,
Mhm.
governance jurisdiction. And if you do that, town, this is what you achieve.
Mhm.
You get the capacity to do A, B, C, D, whatever.
Understood.
And then if the town takes a serious look at that and says, we think we need to do that and approach the village and the fire district with that idea, then it's gonna be up to somebody else to say, well, we're gonna need a new firehouse.
Okay.
And because of the way that we're set up in this community where they're both located, maybe we need another station
I think
somewhere
that's what I
else.
was trying to say is.
Yeah,
So
we
that
don't-
basically says the organization of it. That's what I was asking. Do we need to know, are we gonna look and say, the ladder, someone should have a ladder truck? That's what, no, that's what I said, but so
Does
now,
that help? I mean, this is
well,
clarified.
it clarifies, if we're just looking for organization, we're not looking at the rest of it, which is a lot.
Well, I think it's fair to say if there's a change in the way that it's structured, the town, village, district are gonna need something like this to say, all right, now what do we need to do to make this happen in a way that's beneficial?
Really, then, this is step one.
Yes.
And then, if the town was to take recommendations we made, it would be, step two might be now, okay, we agree with that model that you showed us. And then now we're gonna have to get some people together and figure out how to make the model come together. I think that's what I was trying to say, so if you just got this, and that would break down
Yeah.
in my head.
Yes, but all that we're doing here will be beneficial to a next step, if there's gonna be a next step. So you can decide, you know, the recommendation is to make no changes in the governance structure, or to make a change in the governance structure. Here's what we recommend it be. And this is why. Because what we have now is somewhere of not meeting all of the needs. The current capacities don't meet the needs, and the current capacities don't meet the forecast for what, and I know NFPA is a guideline, and, you know, but we have some standards that we can look at to say that here's where we need to be for our own sake. We've got a capacity of 6 people in a truck, and we can't get 3 in the truck. You know, there's a rhyme or reason for doing this to get to that point, but that's also going to be helpful going forward. If the town takes the step and needs to go forward, then they will. There's going to be a benefit to any study that's been done along the way for them to revisit, and probably put together another committee to start ferreting out. So your work here is not in vain, and I.
Oh, no, I didn't think, have the two departments done anything with, not recruitment, but different ways of retention, or I'll give you an example, and I'm not saying I agree with this stuff. Instead of, some people, because of work and so forth, it's better if it's structured for them, so, okay, Monday night is you, but we don't have a requirement for you to make points or something on the rest of the week. I mean, and I'm just asking, is that stuff, you know, set
I
out
mean,
there?
I can't speak for Mendon, but you know, Honey Falls does a duty night program
Okay,
where you can give me one night.
Yeah.
And whether we have a call or not, you know, you're still volunteering, you're still helping.
you could still come on.
Right,
the
it
other
doesn't mean you
ones,
don't need to come on
But-
Wednesday, but if you can't, if you coach football on Wednesdays, we're good.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, in talking from the chief standpoint, when we formed this committee, basically, as far as I was concerned, everything stopped. I mean, nobody did well with recruitment. You don't get to. I mean, Steve, Chitter hit it right in the mouth, right in the head. You're actively recruiting off your Facebook page, and the only people who look at fire department Facebook pages are firefighters. They're not gonna join.
Those that are,
So my next step, if I'm gonna continue to be chief in the next year, is what does this committee recommend? Because I want to support it no matter what, and we move forward. And so the energy going into recruitment and retention isn't as high of a priority as it was, because I don't know where we're headed next. If that makes any sense.
no, yeah. Right. Absolutely.
I think the other thing that I would add, and I think most people understand this, is no matter what this committee recommends, it still requires that the town, the village, and the district all agree, would have to agree.
Oh,
with it,
yeah.
you know,
Right.
And if somebody doesn't agree to it, there's no way
I mean,
generally move forward.
I'm seeing this as that we provide them out to the village and to the town. And then the village and the town have to decide, is that agreeable with both of them? And are we gonna move forward with it? And once they do that, then I believe that there'll be a committee formed between the village and the town to figure out how we're gonna get to that point. I mean, we're gonna give you everything you need, but in the end, it's gonna be up to the town and the village to decide if they're gonna move forward with this. Now, in my mind, and not as a member of this committee, but as a resident of this town, if all this work is given to you and to the village, I think it's gonna be hard for them, or you and the village, not to move forward with it. I mean, here it is on paper, it's all over the news, it's all over the press. Everything that we do here has been posted. So I believe that's the importance of this committee, to provide that information so that they can and will move forward. People in this town, in this village, want two things. They want to know that the fire truck's going to show up, and then they want to know how much it's going to cost. Those are, despite everything we do, in the end, those are the two most important things. I'm done.
I mean, the safety, fundamental safety of folks that live here, what else?
Well, I mean, not only do they expect it, they demand it.
Of course.
I mean, that's the job of emergency services, is the response to the needs of the folks that call us. And we have to, as Corey said, I'm having trouble putting people on a truck. Well, as a member of the fire service also, that's the most important thing. You can't run the truck out the door. How can you take care of the folks that are calling you to come? So that, to me, that's probably the single most important things. You gotta get people on a truck. And how are we gonna do that?
It's happening more and more countywide. I'm not gonna name specific departments, but there's departments that happened, two departments today that could not do a call. It happened to us the other day, usually still on request to enter. We're already too late in my mind, if we're getting to that point, if we're getting that close, that it's down to one or two critical people to get the truck on the road. We're a decade late.
So
So,
this is critical mass right now.
Absolutely.
It really is. It's a scary,
oh,
it's a
sure.
scary thing.
So the comment was made that it comes down to personnel. I think just as equally as important as it comes down to financing. If we don't have the money to retain volunteers, recruit volunteers, or even hire staff, then we're dead. All of this. In my opinion.
But unfortunately, it can't be out of business.
No,
It comes
absolutely
down.
not.
I
Absolutely
mean,
not.
we can put certain things, could be go to the wayside. I mean, I don't, if the grass gets cut once a week at the park, it's okay. Certain things you can probably cut back, but on the fire's emergency service or police department, you need it. It's just plain old need.
Somebody has to.
You didn't call there because you're just
Somebody has to go, as you're well
And
aware.
we gotta figure, I strongly that we figure out how to make that happen. We live here, we gotta be, and our people live here, we gotta keep folks driving through. Just gotta make sure they're, it's a universal thing, it's kind of like when you travel. And you stop at McDonald's. You always know you're gonna get the same Big Mac every McDonald's, right? So it's the same thing with like the fire, or emergency services, as you travel this country. You feel, that you make that 911 call or whatever, get you mostly 911, that you're gonna get the same Big Mac, the same person's gonna show the same kind of equipment, the same expertise. Not everywhere, but for the most part, it's how it works. So, and, we gotta keep that off for, it's just, I don't know, for my wife, my kids, my grandkids. That's what I'm worried about.
The elected officials at the table and in the room have an obligation to provide.
Okay, yeah.
information. So we're hoping to get them some information so that they can see what's necessary. If there are problems, let's get them. fixed.
And we can give that information to town, the town can take it to the people could reject it. I mean, you can leave it in the water, right? And you go, well, I guess until something then obviously has, as it always, as it always happens, something bad has to happen. Then all of a sudden, people wake up again to the fact. I think we're witnessing that on the police side, right?
And I'm gonna echo what you just said, is that's why when the two chiefs came to me and said, we got a problem. That's why I said, I can't just sit here on my hands and wait for
We
a
need to do
tragedy.
something.
And then everybody saying, well, gee, if the two chiefs knew about it, they came to you and asked you about it, and you did nothing.
Right.
To me, that's why we're here.
Sure.
Because I don't want to wait till this loss of life. Like when the school came to the town and said, we've got kids walking down the side of Quick Meeting House Road from the middle school. And they tried to get a grant for a sidewalk and we couldn't. We put a sidewalk down to Old Falls Village
Right.
to get those kids off the
Sure.
shoulder of the road of a dangerous spot. I wanted that to happen before somebody got hurt on
Absolutely.
that part of the road. which-
Proactive.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. Right.
And another example to a lesser degree is that when the Mendon Cemetery Association, which owns the cemetery in Mendon on 64, just south of the south side,
Yeah.
the Ham.
Yeah.
So they came to us and said, basically, they're going to go broke because they can't afford to hire somebody to mow it.
Right.
So if they'd have abandoned the cemetery, the town would have had to take over the cemetery. We would have had to honor all the plots. We had to continue to sell plots, or we could go in there and mow the lawn, and they could stay afloat. And that's what we did. So we went in, we mowed the lawn, we maintained the lawn, and the cemetery association could stay afloat. So to me, that's and to a lot lesser degree, a similar type of example.
Still had a little sting, but not as
Yes.
much.
Right.
Okay, I have one more point.
Yes.
You made a point, your terminology was maxing out regional assistance. So there isn't a department in this county that doesn't run regional assistance, have regional assistance come in for calls of consequence, crashing with people, traffic, reported fires. But I question when does it become, when is it not another business responsibility to fund it and take care of my calls, routine calls, for example. If you take a Henrietta or a Pittsburgh or even an Avon taxpayer, they're paying district tax on the fire district. And they're sending trucks to Honey Falls because we're struggling during the day. It's not at all fair to them. It's not their responsibility.
More
So-
than it is
right.
going there.
Right, so- When we go on more calls within the town together, we're all kind of paying fire tax, and that makes sense to me. But if it gets to a point where we can't prove for an automatic alarm, a more routine call, it's not another town's responsibility to pick up that slack. It's not financially doesn't make sense. And it shouldn't be allowed, like. So
Well,
that's,
this is something we're going to.
Absolutely. So we know that we've worked together more in the past couple of years and it's been beneficial, but we also know that we're both bleeding manpower every year and it's not gonna work anymore shortly.
So it's critical work. It's very important work that we're doing. And, I'm impressed again. I would like to meet with fire departments offline so we can get some of these things filled in and keep moving for the general committee understanding of where we are in our capacity for fire protection. And then where do we want to be? What's not working? What's not fulfilling anymore or will not shortly? And how do we get back to where we want to be? Steve, do you have anything that you want to add?
Oh, no, ma'am. That was a good conversation and needed to happen.
All right, any questions or anything that anyone else has to add? Anything from the gallery? We appreciate you being here. All right, so next meeting is the 26th of October. I'm expecting to start some financial work with you. I want to get as much of the fire department information out as we can in a format that will continue us on the path. Anything else that you need or want? Okay, great, thank you. I'm sorry we're over a little bit, but I appreciate everybody's input.
Thank you. We take it apart, chairs?
Yeah.
I know, I never know.